But here's what I think my job is as a writer, that the book doesn't feel hard to the reader.
Mm-mm.
I just I don't want anybody to feel, me looking over their shoulder saying, hey, this was hard work, right? No, I want them to zoom through the book.
Welcome to Book Reporter Talks to You. Our guest today is Jonathan Santlofer, whose latest thriller, The Last Mona Lisa, will have you wondering, is the real painting the one that's hanging in the Louvre these days? Because we really can't be sure. It's a Book Reporter bets on selection, as I love not only the subject of the painting, but how he drew, pun intended, such interesting characters and wove the story together. Now, I had the pleasure of interviewing Jonathan in person. Remember in person when we actually did those things at Words Bookstore for his last book, a memoir called The Widower's Notebook, which is also a bets on selection. And I'm so happy to have him with us now. So welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you, Carol. It's so great to see you. I mean, so many times in the past where we were really together and had so much fun,
We had so many adventures.
We did have adventures. We won't tell everybody about those adventures, but there's the good things and bad things about Zoom. I mean, the great thing is that you're here in my living room,
Right.
I'm there with you. So it's added something while other stuff has, I want in person too. I miss people.
You miss people. But you know what, though? As Leonard Barkley said last year, he didn't miss any flights on his tour this year. He said, I didn't miss any flights. I didn't have to get up at 5 a.m. Yeah, so that's the difference. You can just slide into the chair. And there's something about that absolutely works. Also, you can be more places. What we've heard from readers is, I think the last time we did a survey, 45% live in a place they'd never see an author. There's just no store nearby.
Yeah.
So there is that to think about.
I think that's great. Yeah. Yeah.
So let's start by you telling us about The Last Mona Lisa, because I don't want to have to describe it to everybody. I'm leaving it up to you.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, it's a book that does use the jumping off point of a real event, which is the 1911 theft of the Mona Lisa from the Louvre Museum, which is a kind of amazing story. A disgruntled museum worker who was fired, Vincenzo Perrone. There's many variations of this story, but the most accepted one is one I've used. He hid in the closet overnight, came out in the morning when the museum was closed to the public, took the painting off the wall. He was the one who had created the frame and the box, so he knew exactly what to do, put the painting under his jacket, and he walked out of the museum. I mean, here's the best part. Nobody in the museum noticed it was missing for almost 2 days. I mean, the museum director was traveling. The guard that should have been in that room, even on a day that the museum's closed, was home with a sick child. The plot really thickens. So that's my jumping off point. And then we come to the present, and Perrone's great grandson, Luke Perrone, who's been obsessed with him since he was a kid, goes to Florence to find a prison diary that his great-grandfather has supposedly written, which tells the truth about the theft and about the Mona Lisa itself. So that's kind of enough. I mean, it's a story that blends fact and fiction, past and present. What I'm kind of happy about is people are telling me how romantic the book is. And underneath this whatever exterior, I think I am a pretty romantic guy. I've just never written anything romantic before. So,
And it's a very romantic story. The two people in the story of where the theft came from, why he did it, who he loved, it's all there. So what inspired you? Like, what made you say, this is what I'm going to write? Because you have not written a novel in a very long time, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Okay. I hadn't written a novel in a long time, Carol, because what I wrote last was a memoir, The Widower's Notebook, which is not a book I wanted to write. It was a book I had to write about the sudden death of my wife. And my only way to get through that was to write about it. But it prevented me from writing fiction for a while. But you know what's the great part is that I started The Last Mona Lisa 11 years ago. And then I know, but I wasn't writing for 11 years. And then I put it aside and I took it out mainly, I had 100 pages. I took it out mainly because my wife Joy said, this is going to be your best and biggest book. And I took it out, I tried not to cry, and I got back to work on it. And so I think, you know, I could have written many things, but I'm very drawn to this book. You know, I was an art student. I'm an artist in my other world life. You know, I make replications of famous paintings for people. Oh. And so I was drawn to the character of the forger, the whole idea of forgery and theft. I love a good art caper. So this book just had everything for me. It kind of just laid itself out for me. You know, here's a book story that globe trots from Florence to Paris to New York with characters I can fall in love with, you know, just art that I love and that I didn't think of it when I was doing it, but eventually I did. That to me, it became a kind of perfect pandemic book for myself and for readers, because they can take a trip to Italy and a trip to France and, you know, they don't have to leave their chair. So, you know, I did all that research. I walked the exact routes of every one of my characters in Florence, in Paris. When when people say to me, oh, how was your research? Was it tough? Oh yeah, it was really, I had to go to Florence. I had to go to Paris. Gosh, it was awful, you know?
And I had to eat along the way. Oh, a little gelato. Oh, it's just because I must. It has nothing to do with anything else.
Well, I needed the energy to keep walking, of course. I you know, in Italy, I don't think I ever stopped eating except when I went inside to a monument, you know? So yeah, I love Italy. It's like maybe my favorite place to ever be. But yeah, so those were all the many things inspired me. And then, as you know, because you know so much about books and authors, you know, then you go into this private world where you create this world for the reader. You know, somebody asked me the other day, so who's your favorite character? And I said, ask me while I'm writing, because when I'm writing someone, they are my favorite character.
Oh, interesting.
If they're an awful person, because I have to be inside their head, you know, and I have to in some way love them, you know. My good friend and the writer Megan Abbott, who has a spectacular book out right now, The Turnout, she always says, I love my bad characters the most. And we've talked about that. Now, I don't love my bad characters the most, but I do try to make you understand something about what makes them tick.
I interviewed Megan last week about The Turnout, last week or the week before, it all melts together. And we were talking about characters, and she's like, she just really loves the bad. Like, she's just like, let me make them a little bit more evil. Let me see how I can ratchet it up. And I was like, ooh, this is really good, really good.
Because Megan is so good. And, you know, it reminds me, like when I was in graduate school for painting, which gave my parents much upsetness. But anyhow, my graduate school painting teacher used to say, put all of the craziness into your work and have a normal, quiet life. And I think that's great advice. And I think that's true for Megan. I think it's pretty much true for myself. I mean, I have my crazy moments, as you well know. You've experienced some of them, but I do. I mean, I lead a pretty quiet life. You know, I think you have to be a writer, right?
Yeah, you have to do. But you know, also the anniversary of the theft is August 21st. So is this pub date coincidental for a reason, or are we just making this up?
No. We wanted to publish on the 21st, but of course, pub dates are always Tuesdays. So it's not a coincidence. We wanted to celebrate the 120th anniversary of the theft. Yeah, so, you know, part of my research, when I was in Florence, I got to go into Limerate, the prison where Vincent Perugia was interned. And that was an amazing experience. I didn't expect it. It was a fluke that I even found out about it, but they invited me, they let me, and it's a monument. And I got to be in these deserted stone hallways and sit in a 6 by 9 foot cell where they left me alone. I even asked this young guy who was showing me around, could you pull the grate across and lock me in? Which gave me such chills. But then, of course, I had that moment where, like, I don't know this guy. Maybe I'm never getting out, But I did get out. But it added so much for me. I understood what he must have experienced being in jail. He tried to return the painting at the Uffizi in Italy, giving it back to Italy after he had stolen it and hidden it for 2 years. And they arrested him, of course, and he went to jail. Right. And that's where he was in prison. So I had not even known the prison still existed. But it added, all of those things just add to the veracity and the excitement of writing about something.
Yeah, and it's the details that make it. The details that surprise the readers are the things that brought some wow to you. You do the same thing as we're sitting and reading because, that's what that's what was going on. Completely feel it. I also had no idea that there were so few Da Vinci paintings. Like I thought there were like tons. And what was it, 13, 15?
There are like 15 authenticated Leonardo da Vinci paintings. There's why people think there's so much is there are tons of drawings. There's all of his invention things. There are his notebooks that are filled with gorgeous sketches. But he was kind of a slacker in the painting department. And he was too busy inventing flying machines and exploring the circulatory system. But so there are very few paintings. The Lost Leonardo, the Salvator Mundi, this big, huge thing. I met the guy who found it, Robert Simon. I met him at a party, came over to talk to me, and he read my book. He was so lovely. I was a nervous wreck that a Leonardo scholar was reading my book, but he liked it a lot. Anyhow, he was telling me about it, and the documentary, The Lost Leonardo, is out now. So he found this painting in a catalog in a New Orleans auction house, and he bought it for $1,000. They spent 2 years, I think, restoring it, having it authenticated, and then he sold it. But then Christie's sold it for $450 million, the largest amount ever paid for a work of art, to the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, who now supposedly has it on his yacht where nobody can see it. So,
how convenient. Just come to the yacht if you want to see this, probably like in the bathroom.
Well, I explored the idea in my book of what collectors do to get paintings, commissioned paintings. And there are such people who will commission someone to steal a painting at great danger and great cost. There's also, like if you think about the Isabella Stewart Gardner theft in Boston, those paintings have never been found. There's a great documentary on Netflix. But they interview the ex-head of the art squad from Scotland Yard, this wonderful guy. And he says, and which is true, what are you going to do if you steal a really famous painting? You can't sell it. So it becomes international barter. You use it around the world to buy arms or drugs. I mean, it's just awful to think about.
Wow. It's not what you think about at all. You just think about, I want to get more money. No, it's like this barter trade thing.
Yeah, because you can't say, oh, gee, here's that Rembrandt that we stole from the Gardner Museum that everybody in the world is looking for.
Right.
What are you going to do? Either you're locking it up in a vault somewhere or you're bartering. So it's pretty crazy.
I was going to ask if you saw the documentary. I saw it just came out in theaters and actually did well. It did well in those little art theaters. So I was like, there's something you really definitely want to see.
Yeah.
Definitely want to be talking about. So this is the 7th novel, your first historical. You took the story, you made it into a thriller. There's a love story. Like, okay, was this just a little bit of a challenge for you?
Yeah, it was a challenge. Yeah. Maybe it's like having a baby, something I will never experience, even though I have children. But, you forget the pain. I can't really remember the actual pain. I do remember times when I would get up from my laptop and want to throw it across the room.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I did many times when I would have like a structural breakdown and I would take index cards and write every single scene. So I'd have like 300 scenes laid out on the floor or on a table, and then I'd start mixing them around to see what made sense. It's a complicated book because there are 5 points of view,
Mm-hmm.
past and the present. But here's what I think my job is as a writer, that the book doesn't feel hard to the reader.
Mm-mm.
I don't want anybody to feel, me looking over their shoulder saying, hey, this was hard work, right? No, I want them to zoom through the book. And, I was telling somebody the other day that it reminds me, after my painting graduate school, and my parents were like, now what are you going to do? But my mother said, take me to art galleries. I was like, oh, okay. So I took my mother to galleries in Chelsea. No, it was Soho at the time. And we went into a Robert Ryman show of white paintings. And my mother was just like, oh my God, these look so easy. So I tried explaining, and then I said, Mom, let me ask you, when you go to the ballet, do you want to see the ballerinas sweat? So that's kind of the way I feel. I don't want my ballerinas sweating. I want my reader to just have an amazingly great time. I've done the work for you. It's kind of my job, right?
It's your job. It's your job. And that's the reason I can also tell you had fun crafting Luc Perrone, whose great grandfather was the thief of the painting. And I could just tell you loved writing him. It's a little bit of like the hero in the story. And I just said, every time I got to one of those pages, like, yep, he liked this guy.
Right? I do. I mean, well, everybody asks me, so are you Luke? Like, no, Luke is like 30 years younger than I am. He's tall. He's handsome. No, look at me. What are you, crazy? But, you invest, all your characters have a little bit of you.
Mm-hmm.
I loved writing Luke because, number one, he's on a quest.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked that. He's also kind of a damaged character.
Mm-hmm.
He's like a kind of great guy, and he has all these advantages in a way. He's smart, he's talented, he's good looking, can't keep a girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
His art career is,
Mm-hmm.
a mess. He might be losing his teaching job, which supports him. He lives in the same studio on the Bowery in New York and has for years. And, he hears about his great grandfather's. Oh, I should say he's a recovering alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
And which I am not, but luckily I have friends who are, so I could interview them at length. He hears about this diary, and he's been crazed his whole life about this great grandfather who stole the Mona Lisa. And he just bolts, he sublets his loft, he takes a leave from teaching, and he just goes. And I could never do that. I just could never do that. It's just so not me. I'd have to think about it and I'd agonize but that's kind of, so I loved writing that stuff, that person, that kind of person who's just gonna go. I think he, he pays a price for doing that, for both of his life. He learns a lot. I didn't think of it as I wrote it like, oh, I have to give Luke an arc.
Mm-hmm.
I think he has an arc. I mean, I think he goes as a kind of lost young man. I don't want to ruin the story to say he gets everything, because he doesn't.
Mm-mm.
But he does learn an awful lot along the way about his great grandfather, about himself, about a lot of other people he comes in contact with, so.
And I also felt that Luke was worried about certain things. He was worried about not getting tenure. He's worried about losing his job. He's worried about all these other things. And on the end of the book, that's like the least of, like, he's learned so many other things, those sort of don't matter. And it's all these things that sort of kept him up of, am I going to do this? And he's getting notes from people. You have to do this. You have to do that. Were you ever teaching where you felt like that gun at your head to get tenure? Because boy, I felt like that was emotion was like coming clear on the page.
Well, let me say this. I am a born worrier. I worry all the time, no matter how many times I say to myself, don't worry about it. There's nothing you can do about it. I just worry, So poor Luke, I guess he caught that from me because I was writing him. I did teach, I've taught most of my life. First half of my life, well, for a long time, I taught painting and drawing. And then for the rest of my sort of teaching life, I taught writing.
Mm-hmm.
And I love teaching because I love working with young people. Mm-hmm. And I think you get a lot back from it. I don't like meetings. I don't like all of that administrative sort of stuff. But in terms of working with young writers or young artists, it's great. And when I hear from them or I see them publishing a book or I always go, and it makes me happy,
Yeah. And you've been so generous to so many people through the years that you can see where all that is on the page, because you're understanding the anguish that he's going through. And also the whole part where he's not drinking, because you're wondering why, like, what was the reason in his past? What happened to him? And you're constantly wondering what is going to throw him off. He also speaks Italian really well. And how is your Italian?
Terrible. I have a good friend who's Italian and speaks Italian perfectly, and who was my editor, Vito Racconelli, who, by the way, was my student, a writing student, who has published a book. So I feel like a proud daddy every time that happens. But Vito did almost all of my Italian translations for me. And then Noreen Tomasi, who used to be the director of the Center for Fiction, speaks Italian. She looked at them. And then, of course, the editorial people, looked at them. But they were pretty good. I mean, I'm terrible. When I'm in Italy, it's like pretty hopeless. I try, but
It's funny because my son Greg, went to school and studied Spanish and was deplorable at Spanish, but he can walk around France and speak. And I was like, how can you do French? And he says, I just took the wrong class in school. That's all. That was the whole problem with language. I could have done this.
Well, he has a knack then.
He can get through. He said he's been places where he was the only person speaking English, and he can sit there and have conversations with people and get himself from point A to point B. But this is Greg, the world traveler. So it's
good for
hello, mom, I'm going to do this.
Did something right.
Yes,
what we do.
Yes.
We get them ready to go out into the world and leave us in a way. I mean, if they really leave us. If my daughter really left me, I would have to kill myself. But that's a little dramatic. But
No, but your Thanksgiving trips every year, like where you go for Thanksgiving, it's like when I was thinking about the pandemic, I was making dinner. It's like, oh my gosh, what's Jonathan doing? Going to another floor or something like that? What is he going to do for the holiday?
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, I was with my daughter. Since my wife was a food historian, mm-hmm. and we had these huge Thanksgivings with like 20 people, and they were amazing. And so it was a very important holiday in our house. And so when my wife died, my daughter and I we couldn't deal with Thanksgiving. So every Thanksgiving we just took off. We went out west, we went to Turkey, we went to Paris. Again, hardships, but they involved, some pain, especially at the beginning, mm-hmm. but they were always wonderful. They're always wonderful.
The two of you have a real special relationship.
Yeah. What? She's a great girl. She's also the good, I think, well, never mind. I was just going to say she's a lot like I am. She just is,
She worries as well.
I don't think she's as much a worrier, but we complete each other's sentences. Mm-hmm. She has my ridiculous, childish sense of humor. We have a lot in common. But a
lot in common. It's always like fun.
Yeah.
So we also find ourselves wondering a lot in this book, like who's lying? And you do a really good job of, wait a second, who's telling the truth? And there's one person that I really thought was telling the truth and then found out they were lying. So that really got me. That twist really got me. And then the chase to figure out who that person was super interesting as well. And this is like not a year after the book comes out that we could be, sharing all these. I'm just telling people that these little secrets. How much fun was it to write the character one way and then realize, got to switch him in this other direction, got to mix it up?
Well, if it's a character that I don't want to name because I don't want to ruin anything,
right?
I knew from the beginning that character was lying, of course.
Ooh.
And the hard part for me, hard part for you or any writer, if you're writing a character who is not who they seem to be, it's difficult because you have to convince the reader that they are telling the truth, and at the same time you're holding something back, but you don't want to cheat the reader. So there are clues throughout to the people who are lying. And when you discover that somebody has been lying, the reader can say, aha, right. I think, a lot of the people in this book are lying, a lot of them, to get what they want. Some with worse intentions than others. But of course, secrets, it is a book about obsession, family secrets, lies, fakes, all of those things. And they're kind of great to play with. I was saying to somebody recently, a great liar and cheat and monster is so great on the page. I don't want them in my life, that's for sure. But they are the greatest characters to write in your book. Right?
Totally there to be. And then you're also shifting through past and present. Did you do all of one section, or did you go back and forth? And that's a lot of plotting.
I went back and forth. At one point I thought, well, maybe I should just write all the past. I couldn't quite do it, Carol. One of the problems was that though I knew my story, I didn't know everything. So I would discover, certain things in the past or in the present that influenced the other one. And so there was a lot of, so I think it would have been too hard for me to write all the past parts together. It's not like a perfect solution. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah, it sounds like it is, like as we're sitting here now, but that's when it's done. It's not when you're trying to weave everything together. And also, okay, you said the index cards. Did you actually plot it all out at the beginning, or those index cards, Carol, is as close as I got?
No, I don't plot out at the beginning. I kind of know what, I have an idea about the book. I knew it was a book that started with the theft in the past, but that I wanted it to be a contemporary book and a contemporary thriller. So, and I evolved, my characters evolved. And so I had these thoughts, and I sort of kind of knew how it was going to end. That changed or modified a little bit. I never plot out at the beginning for some reason, because I want those surprises for myself. Then I can translate that excitement to the reader. Now, what that means is I have to do a ton of rewriting, because to get to those surprises, it's like, okay, you don't need these 8 pages. You're there, just do it. But what I do is periodically, I stop and I do 2 things. I make these kind of scrolls where I take legal yellow paper and I write every scene and what I think is next. And they become 20 feet long. And I do the index cards when I'm really confused. And then color coded, past is one color, present's the other color, Luke has a color, Alex has a color, Smith has a color. And because I want to see, number one, that there's enough variety between the scenes, that I don't have, for example, 6 scenes with so-and-so doing such and such, I think writing a book, and a big book like this, it's like some sort of orchestral piece. There's got to be loud moments and quiet moments, and passages that are soft and others that are terrifying. And, so I become conscious of that, but I have to pull back from the book and become my own critic to do that.
Right. Well, you also capture some moments, like being in a research library and how everyone is watching you, including this woman that's going through this guy's bag every day. I mean, Luke's poor bag. It's like, what are you taking out? What are you stealing? What are you doing? And I've been in places like that where you just feel like there's guards watching you the whole time. I was at a children's author museum in Minneapolis or outside Minneapolis. And you could read all these things. You had to put on the plastic gloves and sit down and read. And I remember reading something about Katie Camillo, one of her manuscripts. And in the corner was pick up dry cleaning and her shopping list. And I loved it because it was so real. But have you spent time in a library like that where everybody was around you? Because that adds to the tension, because you're just sitting in the room going, he could be accused of doing something he didn't even do just because somebody could slip it in your bag. Somebody could do something to you.
Oh yeah, and I'm very paranoid for no reason. Like like if I'm in a bookstore looking at books, I always think they think I'm going to steal the book. I don't know. But I got myself into the research library at the Laurentian Library. So there's the Laurentian Library in Florence, which is the tourist one, which is very beautiful. And in the book, Luke goes there by mistake. But I got myself invited. I just was really pushy about it to get into the research library, which is quite small. And they did watch me. They didn't trust me one bit. And my Italian just wasn't good enough to explain, everything I was doing. And there was one woman in particular, I don't know, she had it out for me. She became a character in the book. I mean, she didn't just ask me to empty my pockets. She had her hands in my pockets. But it was, it was great to get in there, to be in that library. They're all scholars. It's really quiet. There's a bolted door, this old door, and, you like knock on it and they peek and come and let you in. And so I was in there twice, 2 different days in a row. And I got enough. I got the feel. They let me order some books so I could see what that was like. I got to sit at the table with scholars who periodically would eyeball me, like, because what's he doing? Because but that was a great experience. This just strikes me as funny. So on 2 days ago, I decided I was a little crazed with all my work here, and I just got up and I went to the Museum of Modern Art. Of course, it's not that easy. I did go online first and book a time. And there's a Cezanne show, and it's just beautiful. It's all little drawings and beautiful watercolors. And I had that moment, Carol. I'm standing in a room. There's all these little drawings, and I've been writing about theft way too much. And I look around, I'm thinking now, could I get that under my shirt? Of course, luckily, they have it bolted to the wall, but I have been writing about art theft for too long that I would even consider such a thing.
It's like, what would we do? What would we do?
And then I got rid of that thought. I laughed at myself and I was like, no, you're not going to try and steal a painting, you idiot. But yeah, so.
But you're in book launch moment. You're in book launch mode. It's like, get yourself in the head about the book. And you're in that moment where in 6 months, people will ask you about this book, and authors say they have to go back and reread it because they're like, what character? Like, what was going on? Especially when it's one of the older books. I've had others go, really? Is that what happened? Enlightening to me. Oh, my book,
Well, I was on a panel. It must have been just before the pandemic, a live panel. And a woman asked me from the audience about a character from The Death Artist, my first novel. And I literally had no idea who she was talking about. I mean, and then it took me a while, and I sort of talked around it, and then I went, oh, right. But, it's 20 years ago, and yes, I wrote it, but, as soon as you're writing something else, you kind of forget that. Right?
Yeah. Well, it's often, we work with a lot of authors, we build websites for authors, and a lot of times I say to them, write everything about this book now, like as you're handing in the manuscript, because you're going to be so excited about it now. And then you start writing the next book and you're like, I don't know, you're in South America and you're like, whoa, back in Paris, back in, Italy, what ended up happening in Florence? I'm in Buenos Aires and like, I'm running for my life. So it's very interesting because you do stay in that moment, but people think authors absorb books. You absorb the story of the book, not every single moment of the book. And that's what, and the little moment will be something a reader will remember later. And you're like, yeah, I guess that happens. Oh, okay.
I love when readers do that because I mean, I obviously put that in for a reason.
Mhm.
And I mean, I'm a very, conscious editor. So I go back and I change things, and I want every sentence to be as good as it can possibly be. But then you're right, because I'm writing it. So I'm moving forward, and I'm also cutting things. And so sometimes I take something out, or then I put it back and I can't remember I put it back or that it was there. And I have started a second book because I was asked to write a kind of sequel to this book.
Ooh.
And so it's the same main characters, but it's a totally different book. And this world better get itself in shape, because I have to travel to some of these places. So I'm going. But
You're getting on that airplane. You're getting on that airplane no matter what. You're going. You were a painter for a long time, and then a tragedy happened with a fire. It's one of those stories that you told me, and it's a story you told me long ago that stayed with me. I mean, whenever I sit there and think about an artist and their work and how much you value your work, and I still get chills thinking about it. It was at a retrospective, like a lot of your work was all in the same room, and you brought it from libraries and whatever. And I was thinking of that because that moment where it all went poof, like it's like the history, like poof, the manuscript went away, and what do you do? Where do you go from there? And do you do the same thing again, or do you do something different?
What Carol's talking about is that I had this sort of mini retrospective exhibition. I had been I put this in quotes, serious artist, because that's what I had been. And I don't think of myself at all as a serious artist anymore. I mean, I love art and I make art, but I don't think of it in the same way. In any case, I had an exhibition in which they borrowed back my best paintings from collectors and museums, and I added my 6 newest paintings from my studio, which were wet. I built boxes around them. And this was a big show in Chicago. It opened on a Friday, and the building burned to the ground on Saturday. So I lost all this work. Now, in retrospect, I can say to you, I mean, because that was 20 years ago, I can say, nobody died. It's just stuff. I survived. And that's all true. Now, at the time, you had to pick me up off the floor, of course. But I will say that, it changed my life. And in the end, I'm not recommending a fire, but I had a second life. I was in a crazy state because of it. And my wife and my daughter, we all went, I was invited to the American Academy in Rome. My daughter was 8 years old. And we went there for a year. And I started writing because I couldn't paint. I just couldn't paint. I started trying to replicate my paintings. It was impossible. And I started to write what eventually became The Death Artist. So I don't know, in a way it was kind of a weird gift, I had a second life. When we came back to New York, I should say, I started making replications of famous paintings. And that's how I became a legal forger. People saw them and they would say, oh, can you make that for me? And then collectors who had been like bidding on really not $1 million paintings at auction and didn't get them would come to me and say, can you make that for me? And I'd be like, yeah.
Wow.
So my life changed pretty much. I mean, in terms of my career work, I will say this also, the crime fiction world, which I had no idea about, even though I loved crime fiction, they embraced me. I came out of the art world and I have great artist friends, but the art world is not really an embracing sort of place. It's very cool. You got to wear your black clothes. You got to look really good. And, the crime fiction world, I think it's all these people get out their blood and anger on the page, but they are such wonderful people.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw the blurbs on the back of this book.
Yes.
I mean,
one is better than the next.
Those blurbs, every one of them made me cry.
Yeah. I mean, we've got Michael Connolly, Lee Child, Megan Abbott, Peter James, Sarah Paretsky, Lisa Unger, Lawrence Block, Laura Littman, Ruth Ware, everybody on the back of the book. And those are people that mean something to you. And it also is this very, very, very tight community that is supportive. I mean, they're completely supportive, but they also recognize from reading what they said, how much they really got into your work. And I agree, because the next thing I was going to talk about is how the art world is very competitive. I mean, ego matters, yes, in the writing world. A bad review or this, or the other thing will take you down. But there are people that will say, don't ignore that. This part was so good. In the art world, it's more cutthroat. And I was with a friend years ago. Her husband was a famous artist on the West Coast. We went to a gallery and we were walking through, and she watched him getting tense, like as he was going through, because his painting was here, but people were talking about the other one. And because they were talking about the other one, he felt his work didn't matter. Whereas in publishing, if you're talking about somebody else's work, it's because yours isn't out yet. And it's because we're celebrating that one this week, and the next week we celebrate the next one. And when you get together, you all talk about each other's, but not in the art world, not there.
It's funny. I mean, there's a big difference. In the art world, there's this one precious object, right? And your art dealer is looking to sell it to one person, and it's a lot of money. But, in the publishing world, it's a book and everybody can own it. And that's fantastic. And I will say, not recently, because I haven't been to too many outdoor things. I've been to some. But, when I go to an art opening for a friend now, and I'm always excited, I also feel, I'm so glad that's not me, because it's so hard and it's so competitive. But, just this week, Laura Littman published a book. I mean, Dream Girl. Oh my God, what a great book. And she read my book and loved it and was so generous. And Dream Girl just killed me. It was so wonderful. And then I read, Megan's book, The Turnout. And there's room for all of us. There's just room for all of us. And I think there's some sort of equality in books that there isn't in art. Maybe. I don't know if I'm making that up, but
more fit on the wall behind me. Look at how much is on the wall behind me. And those are just the blue ones because they need a backdrop, Other than that, it's
it's also, I guess, there's a kind of generosity in the world. When I got these blurbs, I mean, I would say to people would say, oh, so what did you owe Michael Connolly? I said, I didn't owe him anything. He's just a fantastic human being who was willing to put his name on my book because he liked my book so much. Now, that's just, it's so touching and so great. And I've read probably every Michael Connolly book. And he's one of my favorite writers. So to get these, it's great.
And it's not just, the one piece. You've read many of his books. He's read yours with an astute eye. It's not like, it's just like, oh, I'm just reading this book. It's reading, and he's going to pull something different. Each of those quotes is talking about something different in the book, because each of them are seeing the book differently. No different than you'd see a piece of art. But there is this other opportunity to bring each other up. And I think that, because look, you can buy a painting, that's one thing. But for a book, you want everybody to succeed. You want the boat to rise. Last year at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a lot of fear about what was going to happen in the book business. And I remember being really blunt, as I am. And I just said, look, if we can't figure this out now, this can't be the golden age for books. I don't know when it's going to be, because there's no sports. There's no going out to museums. There is no, really, Netflix has got a limited amount of films they've made. When you think about what Hollywood is going through right now to make a movie, get it in a movie theater, have it matter, have anything scale, we are one of the few places, in fact, probably the only one, where you were able to create the entire thing without anybody being in the same place. Pretty amazing. And so last year, I wasn't completely worried. And if anything, I thought more people were reading, because there was not much else to do. There was not much new out and on.
Well, you put that beautifully. I really wish I had been, I was going to say, I really wish I'd been in your house, because you would have made me worry less. But I also know you're an amazing cook, because when you post your food, I think, how long will it take me to get to Carol's house so I can get that meal? But
come over. You're more than welcome.
But I was very worried. This book, The Last Mona Lisa, had just gone out. It was my first book without a contract. It had just gone out to editors and publishers.
Wow.
2 weeks later, we went down into lockdown. And I said to my agent, well, just pull it, obviously, forget it. She said, no, there's an auction already for your book. And I just couldn't believe it. But then I realized, like you did, I can't believe it. I'm finally in a profession that people are still going to be interested in, or even more so. And I've spoken to a couple of publishers who had great years. Now, so yeah, I mean, I'm glad books matter again. I mean, books can take you out of your life. I've always thought, I mean, they do that for me, there's nothing like lying in bed and getting taken away somewhere from the worries of life with a great, great book. So yeah, I think it's wonderful that you're right. It is a golden age for books.
And like I said, if we couldn't figure it out now, I don't know when we're going to figure it out, because you can edit from afar, you can do everything. And look, the invention of Zoom, that 4-letter word, helped a lot, because we were doing a lot of like website editing with people on Zoom, and we were actually realizing we could get more done quickly, because you say, do you like this or that? Do you want to move this or that? And also you can have conversations with people face to face, where you're seeing the horror where they say rewrite, or that this is really going well. And you can see it. Whereas when you're reading notes on a page, they're notes. And if you're paranoid enough, you can look at nuance in them. And if not, in a person's face, you're saying, just make the change. There's nothing else implied in making the change. Just do the change. That's it.
Well, this is a new editor for me for the last Mona Lisa. And we've never met except on Zoom. So, yeah,
well, that's obviously liked it enough to do another book. So let's go there.
Great.
I want to talk to you about this art reproduction, the legal art forger that you were, the legal, what drew you to do this? Because I've seen some of the pieces that you've done on other videos, and like, I know you told us who commissioned your work is somebody that maybe didn't get the painting, or they didn't get whatever. So do you then look at that painting and go from there? Like, what's your visual memory like?
Well, I was drawn to it after I lost all that work in the fire. And for some reason, making copies of other artworks felt tangible. I was doing it for myself. And then people saw them and were commissioning me to do these paintings. I do a lot of research. So if I'm going to copy a painting, if I can see it, if it's in a New York museum or Philadelphia or Boston, I go and see it. I take a lot of pictures of it. Otherwise, I gather a lot of pictures of it. I make drawings of it first. I blow it up in scale onto the canvas, and I draw it on with paint. So there's a cartoon of it first. And then I work from photographs, and I try and make it as exact as possible. It's like sliding inside another artist's skin. So I really got the art forger in the book. I really understood him. I got what drove him. And I also got the kind of sadness of that, that you're not making your own work, but that you're copying something. Although I'm not sad at all when I make them, because it's a job. I love doing it. I put on great music, and I make this copy for somebody who knows what they're going to get. It's kind of
exactly. You draw a lot on Facebook too. You'll draw for people's birthdays. You'll draw special, and you'll just do these quick drawings. Are those really quick for you to do? For you to just do a drawing, or is that days?
Yeah, none of those drawings would take me more than 20 minutes tops.
Wow.
But people say, "Oh, you're so gifted." I was born with the ability to draw. There's a lot of things I really do poorly. Like I said, languages, forget it. Sports, I want to kill myself when it comes to sports. I mean, I'm one of the guys who was always picked last. It's one of the, it injured me my whole life. So I'm getting over it now that I'm quite grown up. So
well, they're all injured now, so they can't play now. So you guys are in the same place. You're going to get picked last now, no matter what. Let's get real.
They're not picking me at all. Yeah.
Not picking it all. You did some drawings for this book that I just happened to catch earlier today, and we're going to link to those so people can actually see what you've done, like the drawings that you've done. And I thought that video was terrific. I got a quick link. We'll get it right before this. And because I do a lot of research before these before these events, before these interviews. And I went out there and I was looking, and they'll get a great idea of your talent for doing these reproductions and whatever. And also what you were trying to say with those drawings. I'm not going to say more. We'll put the link in the notes down below on both the podcast and the video. But I thought it was pretty cool.
I just, you know, I made this little video, which I'm going to put up in another day or so, of just me with these. I did drawings for the book, and they were actually in between times to clear my head. So I do a little watercolor of the Mona Lisa. I do a little drawing of Leonardo. And what happened is that my publicist said, we got to do something with these. So they've made postcard sets that they're giving away to people who buy the book. And they're also going to give away some of the original drawings. So if people buy a book through, there's a link to that postcard set, which I know I posted somewhere. They can get a chance to win one of the original drawings.
Oh,
so
wow.
I like giving away that. You know, now that I don't really, for the most part, make art for galleries and stuff, I like giving away my drawings. You know, I mean, I did a drawing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and my first editor, Trish Grader, sent me an email and wanted to buy it for her daughter. And I said, what do you mean buy it? So I sent it to her, and her daughter was so happy. But you know, honestly, it took me 10 minutes. And if that can make somebody else happy, they should own it, right? They should have it.
Well, yeah. See, there's your talent. I can draw little boxes with little, like I can doodle really.
I could teach you how to draw. I taught a class at Columbia. When I worked at Columbia, I taught a drawing class called Drawing for Non-Art Majors. And I had, you know, every different discipline and pre-med and everything. And everybody learned to draw.
Wow.
And I would say to them, give yourself over to me. Don't be scared. I'll teach you how to draw. Because it's learning to see, you know, so it's fun. It's fun.
All right, I'll make dinner. I'll put flowers on the table, and you can teach us to draw. How's that? That sounds like a good deal. You can even book the menu. You can tell us what to do. We'll do that.
No, I trust you. I trust you.
So also, I'm a huge fan of Thomas Crown Affair, and I saw you bring this up, you know, somewhere along the way, because it said at the Met, and as I was reading the last Mona Lisa, it feels like a caper. And I heard the soundtrack Sinner Man by Nina Simone, which is one of the songs I work out to in the pool, believe it or not, because it's really long. It's like if you need 11 minutes in the pool, there you go. So when you're writing, any music? I know you do music when you art, but no music with writing?
Nope, I can't do it. I can't do it. I've talked to friends who write with music and use music as a, you know, sort of impetus. Not me. I need quiet when I work. I love that you referenced that movie, because I wrote about it for Crime Reads, which I think will be up today or tomorrow or whatever. But the remake of the Thomas Crown Affair, I'm not huge, I know it's bad to say, I'm not a fan of the original. I love Steve McQueen, love Faye Dunaway, but I don't like that movie. The remake, I mean, you know, Rene Russo, like the most brilliant insurance. I mean, who is like that in real life? But you know, that's why art, movies, music is so great, because it takes real life and it just tweaks it to that next level, right?
Right.
I think that's why this book became so exciting for me to write, because I was working with these pieces of truth, these pieces of facts, and then I would allow my mind to, you know, create backstory for Vincent Vincenzo Perugia and create a love story, and then parallel it with a love story in the present, you know, and you know, once you have something that's true, a kernel of truth, everything feels more real to you, live, and that's what I hoped to do with this book. You know, it's like caper is interesting. I was asked by Barbara Peters if the book was a caper. I don't think so. Not real. There's caper stuff in it. You know, you go globe trotting after this thing. I think no. I mean, I can imagine that being one of the adjectives, but not really.
Not really, no, because it was the theft. It was different. It wasn't just it wasn't just a sleight of hand to get something else.
Wow.
It was a sleight of hand for a completely different reason. But I was thinking about those bowler hats in the Thomas Crown Affair and getting out of, there are moments that I just want to watch that part. And it's just that fabulous. It's a chase kind of a scene in a very unique way. And it's one of those pieces of film that stayed with me. Not everything does, but that has.
I think if people have not watched the Thomas Crown Affair, the remake with Pierce Brosnan and Rene Russo, watch it. It is totally delightful. It's really fun. Everybody's at the top of their game. They do have some outrageous sex scenes, which I think should have a disclaimer, like, do not try this at home. But
Yes.
Other than that, the movie's really great. And I
right to the end, right to the end.
Filled with surprises. The language about the art world's really good. Yeah, I love it. And so I've been watching a lot of those things because I had to write about them. I rewatched The Maltese Falcon and all those art documentaries that are, I don't know, forgery and theft seems to be on our mind, like truth.
Well, that woman who was at the gallery, I watched it on Netflix. I don't remember her name, but what she was passing off as artwork, unbelievable. What she was doing, all that. And then, did she do it? Who did it? What was going on? I thought that was fascinating. I wish I remember the name of it.
Oh, it made you look.
It made you look.
True story about fake art, and it's about the Knoedler Gallery, which was one of the most prestigious, oldest galleries in New York, which is now finished. It was closed. And that's pretty wild documentary. How could they not know they were selling all these fakes? Although, there are good fakes everywhere in museums just waiting to be discovered.
Right. And we really don't know what's hanging in the Louvre to this day. We don't know which one it really is because there were so many others made. And how about NFTs in art and what's going on with that, which I find, I can't even get my head wrapped around that and being bought with Bitcoin. I can't even go there, Yeah,
it's too crazy for me,
Yeah. But we'll have to leave somebody else to be writing those, I'm not going to write. So I don't know hanging in the Louvre. Now, was this always the title? Was it always Last Mona Lisa? Or did you play around with it?
I don't think so. I I had many other, I know I had a title that nobody liked, which was called The Original.
Okay.
I liked it, but my editor and my agent, they were like, it doesn't mean anything. And I said, well, what does Silence of the Lambs mean until you read it? But in fact, I came up with The Last Mona Lisa, and I love the title. And, so I'm happy they pushed me. I'm really happy they pushed me.
And I love the cover. I love the cover and what they did with the cover.
I had nothing to do with the cover. My publisher put it together. They showed it to me. I was like, wow, that is gorgeous. I love it. And, they explained why they did it in that way. And I was thrilled, so they made a beautiful book.
It's really, really beautiful. So now Edoardo Ballerini narrates the audiobook. Let's just go right to the top of a person doing the audio. Did you pick him or did he pick you?
No. Brilliance Audio picked Edoardo Ballerini, and they sent me his audio, his audition tape for me to say yes or no. And it was like, are you kidding? He's the greatest audio reader ever. So yeah, I think is that out or is it about to come out?
I think usually they do simul. We'll check, but usually it's simultaneous. I believe we've got a clip of it already. I'll check. And if we do, it will be at the end of the podcast, or we will hold the podcast to put that up, because we always put an excerpt so they can listen at the end of the podcast. So
I heard his audition tape, which was spectacular. And, but I haven't heard the book read. Okay. And I'd love to hear him read it because he's just the greatest, You
can just walk around town with headphones and go, I'm just listening to my book. This is what I'm doing.
The audio people said, do you mind if you don't read it and we have this guy, Edoardo? And you said, are you kidding? You'd have to give me $1 million to read this book. No way. I want someone great to read it. And they got him.
Well, do you know what it is? You'd be editing. You'd be going, nah, let's move that phrase around. No. Oh, they walk in the park. No, that's not what they really did. That would be better if they walked into a restaurant,
Yeah, I mean, I had to read, do the audiobook for my memoir, The Widower's Notebook, and that was really painful. It was a really terrible, hard experience, but I've never listened, but people tell me they like it, but I never want to do that again. I don't want to.
No.
Nope. Nope.
That book was brilliant. And I think about that book a lot. I think about that book. Like I said, I always think of what you're doing on Thanksgiving. I always think of you when I'm making Thanksgiving dinner. And these moments, and we had the moment where we chased down what it was, Johnny Versace's home was that what Johnny Versace's club in Miami? There is a photo out there somewhere, folks, of us with William Lashner in front of the gates at Johnny Versace's house. And I don't know what we thought was going to happen. Like we were going to be welcomed in.
Wait, we were there for a mystery conference,
Mystery conference. Was it mystery conference or Miami Book Fair? I think mystery conference. Sleuth Fest. They might have been Sleuth Fest.
Sleuth Fest. Yes, and we escaped. It was Sleuth Fest where I was the runner-up for Sexiest Man. Now, first of all, what? And if you're going to be called Sexiest Man, you're going to be the runner-up? I mean, come on. I mean, which is, of course, first that I was even in the running makes that contest kind of dubious. But anyhow, yeah, we escaped. We went to the Johnny Versace mansion. We were nuts.
And we were standing there, and it was before the murder. I'm almost sure it was before. And we were expecting, and then the murder happened. I'm like, oh my gosh, we were there. And I think we were there not that long before or something like that. I got back and look at the dates, but I was like, what were you expecting? Like he was going to come out and say, would you like to come in and have lunch?
Yeah, right, exactly. I don't know what we were thinking, but yeah, the murder was soon after.
Soon after.
It wasn't our fault.
No, but we also knew where those gates were. And you knew when somebody was standing outside and saw, like I could picture the whole murder scene. Like really, we could have written a chapter. We could have done it, the three of us together.
I miss all those conventions, Sleuth Fest and VoucherCon, which just got canceled, because you get a chance to be with all these crime writers, and most of them are so much fun. Just so much fun at them. So I'm hoping by next year,
But I'm thinking of all the places I went that I never would have gone on my own if I wasn't doing these, these conferences and stuff like that. I would never go see that city, explore it with somebody and see it with their eyes, go to these restaurants, try these things. Like I think of getting into Portland and I was on the travel, bus that brought you into the center of the city. And you think about all those things now, and especially during the pandemic, I'm visualizing a lot of cities that I've been to. Now, look, do I want to go on the road like that again? No. I've sort of done this, I will pick and choose where I want to be. But by the same token, have those memories of all those places is pretty cool.
I remember a VoucherCon in Madison, Wisconsin.
Yes.
And I can picture the square and how pretty it is, And I had never been in Madison, Wisconsin, and I really liked it. And, it's true, you get to go to these places that you would just never necessarily go to.
And there was a clock, and it was the same on all four sides. So I, who have zero sense of direction, was not helped by that clock and that square. They said, well, go around the square. And I was like, I would just go around it 3 times before I'd realize what to do. Zero sense of direction.
GPS was made for people like us.
Exactly. Exactly.
Book in the last Mona Lisa, because it takes place in the contemporary half of it in our time, I had to be aware of things like GPS. And at one point in the book, I wanted somebody to be lost. And I just thought, oh, okay, his GPS quits. It doesn't receive over here, because that's happened to me.
Right.
So I hope they don't improve it so that it always works.
No, one time Waze went out and I was going out to Long Island to do a group of book club book events. And I was like, how am I going to get there? Because Long Island to me, you could sit there and they said, well, you just go a little further out east. I have no idea what you're talking about. I am it's beyond me.
Well,
so how long do we have to wait for the next book? What are we talking? Are you writing or
I'm writing it. I'm 100 pages into the new book, which is for me a phenomenon. I hope to finish the book by January.
Okay.
And they hope to publish it a year from, let's say, February, March.
Okay.
It won't be that long.
No.
And
it won't be 10 years. It won't be 10 years. It won't be 10 years since novels.
I'm not doing that anymore. The clock is ticking on my head. So I'm not going to do that. I want to keep working and writing. I already have ideas for the book past this one, which is crazy, It's not like me.
Now, are you painting at the same time? Are you
I'm painting my legal forgeries, but
okay?
I'm only going to do 1 or 2 a year. That's
Okay.
all I'm going to do. I just finished a 15-foot mural of an American impressionist that's really kind of beautiful and was an intense labor of love. But now I'm going to take a break. I draw almost every day, but I do that for myself because it's very relaxing to me. And so, but writing's not relaxing.
Mhm.
It's very intense. But I'm writing, and then I'm going to go upstate for a month to be in isolation, and then I think I'm going to Yaddo for a month to write in isolation. Because writing, I don't know, I have to go into that world. And it's funny, you're isolated, but my mind is zooming through Florence or through Paris, and these different places. So I don't feel alone when I'm writing. I have all these characters with me.
So here's a question. So, because I know you're very connected to Yaddo and you go to places to write. Right now, you're in your home by yourself, okay? But you need to go someplace where like the walls are clear and you're not, I don't know, dealing with an animal or dealing with whatever. Or
No, I write at home, and I love where I live too. I used to I made this terrible mistake of selling a farmhouse that I owned in upstate New York for many years. And I did that thing, after my wife died, people said, don't make any big changes. And I didn't listen to them. I just couldn't be there. So I sold that. I sold that like 6 months before the pandemic. But you know what? It ended up, it was okay because Manhattan was really pretty fine. And I would take walks every day. And I had a COVID circle of friends whom I saw. I saw S.J. Roseanne. I saw Megan Abbott. I saw my daughter. I saw a group of people. And I have a roof garden on this building. Plus, my loft is 2,000 square feet. And you don't get that in New York. So I have 18 huge windows. I can walk around like a crazy person. I can exercise. I'm sort of now an exercise nut. And I wasn't unhappy, and I work here. So I still work here. The reason I go to those places is when I want isolation from the world. Because when I'm home, I'm interrupted with, even during the pandemic, I think like, gee, I have to clean out that cabinet. Oh, I have to wash my clothes. Or I have to take a walk and I have to go to Whole Foods and for no reason. And if you're at a colony, you're locked in, kind of. I mean, they let you go out, but you're just working on your book or your art. And I love that kind of intense immersion. So I feel like I know where this book is going, but I also feel like with a month at Yaddo, a month in the country alone, I can really flesh it out. And then I have to travel. Once I write the book first, and then I take the trip, and then I rewrite the book. Because then I've seen the places and know the places. So
you know what you want it to be, but then you've got to get there, see it, and then write back to it.
Okay. I had written most of the last Mona Lisa, and then my editor said, I feel like you could use more Florence color. And my daughter was visiting, and I repeated that to her, and she said, so go to Florence. I'm like, I can't go to Florence. She was like, why not? And she literally went to my computer, booked me a flight for me and an Airbnb. And she said, you're going on Thursday. And this is what my daughter's like. And I did it. And it was like the greatest thing I ever did. It was fantastic. So I need to do that again. So the world is on mourning. It has to improve, which I want to improve. I mean, I just worry about everyone all the time. And and I needed to make my next book great. So
okay, we'll just tell the CDC you're on. He needs to finish the book. Let's get going. Forget commerce moving, forget anything. We need Jonathan to get this book finished. So there's the reasons now. Because I don't think any of the other reasons they've got are good enough. So we'll just have to try this one. Read this book if you want another one, folks. This is what you got to do.
Exactly. Yeah.
So good to see you. Promise you'll come out and visit. Please come out and visit.
This is so great, Carol. I mean, you're just the greatest. Your big personality is so much fun. I miss you.
I know I miss you, but I miss all our fabulous times. We've got to go make more of those because believe me, us sitting in a restaurant in Maplewood could become a production. Like the only thing the two of us can do.
That was the last time.
Taking a train back to the city, we can make a production out of,
You actually, yeah, you actually drove me drove me to Maplewood from the city, and we sat in a rest. That was the last time I saw you in person.
I know. Thank God for Zoom. Thank God for Zoom.
This is so fun.
So look forward to seeing you too soon and somewhere. And to everybody else, we look forward to seeing you next time on Book Reporter Talks To. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, everybody who's supported this book and bought this book. I appreciate it so much. Thank you.